Exploration Toolkit offers locks and keypads for you to add to your game. So for example, we have combination locks, which as you can see here, we can click on the lock to have the camera zoom in, and then we can move the dial to basically enter in the correct code. The correct code for this one is 8327, so here we can go 8327, that will unlock it. We can then go out and open up the box. This one right here is basically showing us that we can also have locks that we don't have to zoom the camera in. So this one over here, we had the camera sort of zoom in and detach from the player, whereas this one, the player can kind of just interact with it like so. We also have keypads. Now this here is a safe, which at the moment isn't going to open unless we enter the code 1111. So we can zoom in here. Now, if I enter in the wrong code, for example, 2580 and hit enter, that's going to play the incorrect sound. But if I enter in the right code and hit enter, that's going to open up the safe. And inside we have a little note right here. So we have two types of keypads. We have this one right here, which is what we saw on the safe. And then we have this one over here, which is a keypad with a display. So every time I enter a number in, it is going to be displayed up here. And if we enter in the correct code, which is 41672, so 41672, and hit enter, it's going to display a success message and play a sound effect. So let's have a look at how these are set up in the editor. So if we go to the editor here, we'll see that we have our keypads and our combination locks. So the combination lock right here is constructed of two main systems. It uses the camera focusable system, first of all. So when we interact with the combination lock, you'll see here under events, it is basically accessing the camera focusable component, which down here is right here. And essentially, camera focusable makes it so that the camera can detach from the player and sort of transition over to another position, as well as enabling the mouse cursor. So here we set the focus pivot to be this camera focus point, this empty game object, which I've positioned in front of the lock. And then what we're doing is we are setting the time to focus, so it takes half a second, and we can also change the field of view, and that is going to set the field of view to be 60 when we're at the lock. Now, when the focus is completed, it is going to enable the dial interactions, which is a game object right here. And this game object is essentially just a little collection of interactables. So we see there's little game objects here with tiny colliders, and each of those have an interactable. Now, each of those interactables, when we interact with them, are going to call a function on the combination lock. You'll see here, turn dial counterclockwise, and turn dial clockwise. And the number right here is the index for the dial. So the top dial is 0, second is 1, third is 2, and the fourth one is dial 3. You'll see on our combination lock right here, if we go to dials, this is an array of all of those dial transforms. Now let's look more at the combination lock. So here at the combination lock, we have an unlock combination, which is essentially the numbers we need to enter for it to be correct. We can also choose to scramble the combination at the start, or if you don't want to do that, you can set a starting combination right here, but I like to scramble them at the start. And don't worry, it isn't possible for it to scramble to the unlock combination. It sets it up so that it can't actually do that. Then down here in dials, we can basically assign each of the dial transforms. Also the dial's interactable parent, which is this one right here. And then we also, down here, we also have the rotation axis. So what local rotation axis are these dials going to rotate around? And also their zero angle. This is the angle that they are at for 0 to be displayed outwards like this. Then we have when unlocked. So what we can do is we can destroy it when it is unlocked, as I'm doing here, and we're basically destroying the lock after 0.5 seconds. Or if you have an animation where you have the lock sort of pop out and turn, you can enable this and set that up right here. We then also have some sounds. So here we have a turn dial sound for when we turn the dial, as well as an unlock sound. Now you'll see I'm also enabling use global audio source. Now a global audio source is using this prefab right here, which if you go over to the core prefabs managers folder, you can drag that in. This is essentially a singleton with an audio source attached to it. and it allows us to play a sound effect without needing a direct reference to an audio source. It just makes it so we don't have to attach an audio source to each and every object. So that is the combination lock right there. Now, what differs between this one and the one over here is this one over here doesn't have the camera focusable component. And if we go over to the dial interactions, you'll see each of them are a bit different. The difference is over in the interactable component, and look at the method. The method here is set to world. Basically, a world interactable is one that we can look at with the camera and left click, whereas on this combination lock right here, if we go to these dial interactions, you'll see they are set to cursor. And a cursor interaction method is where we have to have the cursor enabled. Okay, so if we're focused in on something and the cursor is enabled, we can click on it that way. Now let's look at the keypads. So with the keypad, for example, this one right here, it essentially uses the keypad component. And it also has the camera focusable as well. So we have those two components here. Basically with a keypad, we have a correct code, a correct display text, which doesn't really work with this one here, and a max input length. This is the maximum amount of numbers we can input into a code before we have to clear it. We have some other properties. For example, is the code going to be verified instantly once it is entered? Are we going to clear the input upon pressing enter? And are we going to disable the input after completion? Because when you're done, you probably don't want the player putting in more numbers and unlocking it again, so we can disable the input after it has been successfully added. So you'll see here, we then have the input text, which is basically just a text component on a little world space canvas, which is going to display the numbers, as well as a base text color. So this is the text color of its default state, and then a correct text color. So this is what happens when it shows open. Then down in sounds, we have a bunch of sound effects and some events that you might want to invoke as well. So if you're connecting this to a door, for example, you would connect the onSubmitCorrectCode event to open door function. On the safe right here is where we have that in action. So if we open up the safes keypad right here, you'll see when it is submitted correctly, it does a number of things. First of all, it opens the door that it is connected to, and if you want to learn more about how doors work, simply go to the door video or jump in and explore the component yourself. It also then enables the door interaction, because by default, the door interactable is disabled. It then also exits the camera focus so that the camera is then going to pan out back to the player. And finally, it is going to disable the unlock interaction, which is an interactable that is over the safe, which basically has the player or has the camera zoom in to the lock to unlock it. So yeah, feel free to explore this demo as it has a bunch of different unique combinations, as well as I recommend the door scene, as that shows you how you can have a keypad directly connected to a door, which technically we do have here. So hopefully you've learned a bit more about how keypads and combination locks work inside of the Exploration Toolkit.